I've got a script and a plan for this video, but I'm throwing it out the window today. We're going to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is productivity. First thing I got to say, productivity can be super unproductive. Meaning if you get obsessed about developing the best productivity method or researching productivity to death, that can be a way to put off being productive. So I don't want to be that for you. Specifically, what I want to talk about today is a little hack that I use from time to time that really helps me get back on track, helps stave off the feelings of overwhelm that are so rampant these days, and can help me feel and stay more productive. I also have got a free gift I want to share with you later. If you're into that sort of thing, you want to learn how to make a living online, I can show you how I do it. I've got that. That'll be for you later. Stick around to the end. All right. So first of all, what is productivity? Productivity is simply getting meaningful things done. We have goals, we have dreams, we have desires. None of those goals can be met without things getting done. Getting those things done is productivity. So what gets in the way? What stands in the way of you and me achieving those goals and being productive on the way to achieving those goals? If you're not being productive, first of all, I don't bow down at the altar of productivity. I don't think that's the be-all, end-all. I think we were made to work, made to create, to impact the world, sure, but there's nothing wrong with laying around watching movies all day also. So I don't feel like every second has to be productive. But when it's time to work, I want to work, and I find myself more often than not meeting some resistance when it's time to get to work. What's behind that? I propose the thing behind that is fear. Now, you may nod your head and say, yup, that's it. Or you may be a little more macho and be like, I ain't afraid of nothing. Okay, you are. However, maybe you're not like cowering in fear. You're not about to have a panic attack, but there's something that's keeping you from doing the things you know that you need to do. And for me, it's things like, and for a lot of people, it's fear of indecision or fear of making a decision, which leads you to being indecisive. You're afraid of, I guess, making the wrong decision, afraid of just the process of choosing what to do. You might choose wrong. You might do the wrong thing. There's fear of failure. That's a given. Right? I may spend a lot of time doing this thing and it might not work. That sucks. That's a waste of time. I'd rather just waste my time than waste my time on something that won't work. It kind of makes some logical sense. And there's, of course, just the fear of discomfort. I don't want it. This is going to be difficult. I don't like difficult things. I'd rather do the easy thing. Sadly, you can't always just do the easy thing. A lot of times you got to dig in and do the hard stuff. So there's some fear behind productivity. And I found throughout my life, I struggle a lot with lots of different fears, anxieties, depression. I know a lot of it really well. Ultimately, the answer to the thing that you're afraid of typically is to lean into it, to expose yourself to it, and to learn to become friends with it to a degree. So whatever the thing is that you're afraid of when it comes to productivity, we got to lean into that a little bit more. Okay, so let's talk about productivity systems. I've read lots of productivity books, used every productivity system under the sun. I love pencil and paper. I also love apps and software, and I could tell you, I could do a whole video on all the different productivity systems that I've used and lost countless hours to. That's not the focus of this video. Whatever system you use, I'm not trying to convince you to change from one app to another, from paper to digital or digital to paper. This is more of a concept that you can apply over the top of whatever you're doing, and it will simplify what you're doing to the point where you could probably run this whole system from a pocket notebook. I keep a pocket notebook, but anyway, I was trying to find it, but it's not in my pocket. Duh, failure. Anyway, so productivity systems in general, if you're looking into productivity, you won't go far without coming across David Allen's book, Getting Things Done. It's been out for a couple of decades now. It's required reading if you're interested in productivity. And I actually like the follow-up book, Making It All Work, even better. It dives in deeper, and I like that a lot. But the concept of GTD, or getting things done, it centers around one of the core principles is this idea of a project. So you have a list of projects that you're working on, and a project is defined as something that takes more than one step to complete. Most of the things we do are projects. They can't be done in one single task, one single sitting. There's multiple steps to that. So if I'm making a video, that's a project. I've got to script the video, come up with the idea for the video, shoot the video, edit the video, upload the video, do all the things that need to be done. There's a whole list of things that goes along with that. So anything worthwhile that I've ever done when it comes to work and productivity has come from a project. Now, there are certainly like little tasks that we do. I need to drop off that thing that I ordered on Amazon that I'm returning at the UPS store. That's just a single task that can go wherever tasks go. But as far as important, like moving the ball down the field, another step towards completing or achieving the goals that we've set for ourselves, typically those are projects. And the problem with systems like GTD, it's not really a problem with the system, it's just a problem with human nature, I think, is it tends to tell you whatever idea comes to you, capture it, and if it's actionable and it takes more than one step, which most things are, it should go on your projects list. And what happens? You end up with a big honking list of projects. Even if you are relatively minimal and like you don't take on more than you should, you're not overcommitted, you're not overly active in doing lots of different activities and joining all these different clubs, even so, that list will get very big very quickly because it includes things like figure out the promotion for next month, and also includes next week's video, and includes, clean the garage. Like anything that you may want to do in your life ends up on this list, and it can be overwhelming. Now, David Allen has ways of trying to cull that overwhelm by taking the tasks within those projects and putting them on lists based on context. So anything that I can only do here in the studio, that would be one context. So I only put things I can do in the studio on the studio list. That's never worked for me. For me, here's the deal. If I've already overwhelmed you with that process, good, because I'm not recommending you do that. The thing I've taken away from getting things done is this idea of projects. But I've realized over the years, and especially over the last few months, there are two types of projects, and it can get frustrating because the two types are infinite or eternal projects and finite projects. Eternal and finite. What do I mean by that? That's big words. Eternal projects are projects that never actually end. For example, creating content. I will never be done, right? As long as I run this business, I will have a weekly video that I want to create. And if I'm doing a membership, like at my business, Home Studio Corner, every month I've got a batch of content I have to create for that. Now, I enjoy it. It's not that I'm begrudgingly doing it, but it is something that has to happen week in, week out, month in, month out. It's never actually done. Yes, one piece of content can be done. And in that sense, YouTube content is kind of the overarching project, and there are little mini projects for each video that I'm going to make. But the process, I could be done this week, and then I've got another one for next week. So those are the eternal projects. Correspondence, checking my email, replying to comments, doing the administrative stuff that I've got to do, running numbers every month, QuickBooks, paying taxes. Those are all things that you have to continuously do, and they never end. And that differentiation is important, because the other kind of project, what I'm calling finite projects, these are things that have a start point and an end point, and then you're done forever. And in my experience, while the eternal projects are important, I got to do my taxes. Can't avoid that. I got to make content. That's how I bring leads into my world. That's the thing that starts this whole business working. That's also important. But if I only ever do those, quote, eternal projects, my business tends to stall, because the thing that really drives growth, revenue, and big bumps in income are these finite projects. So what's an example? Eternal projects are things like weekly YouTube video, monthly content for my members area, those types of things. What are examples of finite projects? A finite project might be launch a new course, create a new funnel, write a new email sequence for your new subscribers that sells them something. These are like the thing that you think about running a business. Like, these are the things I need to do to grow my business. But I found you get caught up in doing the eternal stuff, and you never do the finite stuff. And the finite stuff is arguably more important and has a bigger impact on your bank account and your success and your growth in your business. But I found if I'm not careful, I will spend all my time on the eternal stuff. That's such a dumb phrase, versus the finite stuff. So I may, if I've dedicated like 2 days a week to all the content I need to make, I may stretch that out into 4 and never get around to doing these projects over here. And then when I've got some time, let's say I've done my content for the week and I've got a day in front of me and I'm thinking, what am I going to work on? Well, that's when the overwhelm comes in, because I start to look at this list of projects and it's overwhelming. I'm like, it's 100 things there. Even 15 things feels like too many, because then I have to sit there and decide which one to do, and that's exhausting. I would rather pre-decide what I'm going to work on. That's interesting. Pre-decide what I'm going to work on. What can that look like? So years ago, I read a couple of books by a guy named Leo Babauta, I think is the way you say his name. And it was about, he's the guy behind Zen Habits, which is, he's all about like being very minimalistic, he would take on these habits, and he would establish a habit like 1 month at a time and then take on a new habit. So it was pretty interesting stuff. But he wrote a book called Zen to Done, which is like ZTD, which is like his take on GTD, which is getting things done. So that's where I originally heard about this idea. But I've kind of morphed it and made it my own. But here's the idea. You can't do anything about the eternal projects. I have to do a new video for next week, and then the next week and the next week. But for the finite projects, I can make that a lot easier, and I call it the big 3. So I take this list of projects that I could be working on, and I pick the top 3 that I want to work on. And those become my big 3. Those become the 3 that I work on exclusively until all 3 are completed, and then I pull 3 more. So how does that work practically? I don't make my eternal projects like this week's video one of the big 3, because this week's video has to happen every week. That gets scheduled. That's in my regular weekly schedule, right? I'm doing it right now. Right now is scheduled for making this video. That's what I do. It's a part of my routine. So that's the big aha moment for me. Was I would try to limit myself to just 3 projects, but it might be the 3 projects might be the 3 pieces of video, the 3 videos I have to make this week, and then the next 3 projects are the next 3 videos, and I never actually do any of the big projects because I'm focused on the content. So separating those into the recurring stuff that I have to keep doing, putting that on the calendar and just making sure I do it, like standing meetings with myself to get those done, and then any other time in my schedule gets devoted to the big 3. So how does this work? I pick 3 projects that are most important, that would move the ball forward, that need to happen next based on schedule and what's coming up. For example, we're coming in on the holiday season. I got to start thinking about what I'm going to do for Black Friday. So that's on my list of potential projects. But what I do is, instead of having this huge list of projects to choose from, which means I might make a little bit of progress on all of them, or a little bit of progress on a half dozen of them, but none of them ever find their way to the done list because they're all in this massive list of projects. Instead, I pull 3, and those become my focus. Now, that may be focus for the week. It may be for 2 weeks. It may be for a month or more, but I'm focusing on, aside from my regularly scheduled content that I've got to make every week, those 3 projects. Whenever I've got time, I'm working on one of those 3. And here's the kicker. I don't go to a new project until all 3 are done. And then when those 3 are done, I pick 3 more. This means if I've got a list of ideas that I want to work on, list of projects that I want to do, all of those go into an on-deck list, an on-deck folder. And I pull the top 3, and that's what I focus on. So if a new idea comes to me, it'd be great to do a really cool in-studio event in Nashville. Cool. I'll jot down a few notes about it, and I'll throw it in a literal folder called On Deck. And next time it's time to pick a new big 3, I'll pull out my On Deck folder or go through my digital files, and I'll go and see, here are all the opportunities available to me. Which of you is going to get picked? And I pick 3, and then I focus on those. And that list goes away for a while I'm working on the big 3. If new ideas come, that gets added to the list. And then when those big 3 are done, I come back and look at the big list of potential projects and go from there. This relieves that sense of overwhelm for me. Because if like that idea of doing an in-person event, that's an idea on my list. If that came to me and I thought, let's start making progress towards that, and I make a project and I start doing some things for that, then another idea comes and I'm like, I guess I'm going to start working on that too. I end up with a huge list of projects that I've quote unquote started, but I'm not really making progress on them. I'm not making progress on much of anything because there's too many things on the list. Instead, when I'm only working on 3 projects at a time, and only those 3. Then if a new idea comes to me, I'm like, yeah, that might be cool. Write it down, throw it in the on deck folder. And then when it's time to look, I can look through all those ideas and say, you know what? It's time. I feel like almost like I'm in the major leagues. I'm calling a pitcher up from the minor leagues. I'm like, you're getting called up. It's time for you to go to work. That's the idea. So now I'm much more likely to capture these ideas, knowing that I don't have to do anything right now, because whatever idea I capture today is not going to be one of the big 3. I've already established my big 3. I'm working on those right now. I'll add that to the list. And then one day when I finish these big 3, I'll look at my big list of ideas and come up with the next big 3 that I'm going to work on. In the past, I did this, but I included all my regular weekly content, tasks and projects, and it just got really confusing. So instead, I separate stuff that's eternal, stuff that is never ending, stuff that I do over and over and over again, that gets scheduled, and then any other time gets devoted to projects. And of those projects, I choose 3, I call it the big 3, and I work on only those until they're done. Then I work on another 3. What ends up happening is, A, you're a lot more choosy, because man, if I can only work on 3 things, it better not be something dumb, right? Or I'm going to be stuck until I'm done with the other 2 before I can pick something better. So it forces me to pick better ideas, which is playing right into the hands of the 80-20 principle, which says really only 20% of what you do is going to produce 80% of the results. So I don't need to do all these 20 projects. There's probably only 3 on that list that really need to be done. So let's do those. And then once those are done, there'll be a new 3. There'll probably be a few more things added to the list, and I can pick the best of those. So I know I'm working on something that's going to move the ball forward. What does this mean? The little one-off projects that don't mean much, that won't make much of a difference in my life or anyone else's, they stay on the on-deck list. They maybe never get done. They maybe get moved to a someday maybe list. They maybe get thrown in the trash, because I realize I'm getting the important stuff done, and the unimportant stuff is just going to fall by the wayside. And it doesn't take up any extra space in my psyche, because I know all that stuff is in the on-deck folder. Future me will deal with that when I come to a crossroads where I finish the current big 3 and I'm looking for my next big 3. And that's how this system works. It's very simple. I've not done this exclusively for years and years and years, but when I'm feeling overwhelmed and like I got too much going on and I'm not making the progress I want to make, I do this, and it's something about it snaps my butt into gear. And now I know this is what I'm working on. So today I'm finishing up the 3rd project on my list, and it's been a couple of weeks. It's maybe been a month of this big 3. One of them has to do with releasing a new course, which that project, as I worked on it, changed and morphed into actually 2 courses happening at the same time. So the everything kind of stalled while I'm trying to figure out how that's going to work, but I'm okay with that. It may take me a few weeks. What happens there is I take the time to finish that project, which was about just actually setting up the plan and the schedule for the next thing. And it took longer than I expected, but my regularly scheduled videos still happened, because I'm having those be in my schedule regardless of the status of the other big 3 projects, if that makes sense. And if a project is a big one that's going to take you 6 months to do, then maybe chunk it down into a smaller sub project, and that becomes one of your big 3. So you're not stuck for 3 months on one specific project, unless of course you're like, this is so worth doing, I'm going to force myself to, any spare time I have in my workday outside of the regularly scheduled content and other things that I have to do, I'm working on this project. If that seems to be the right thing that's going to move your business forward, I say do that instead. Okay, so I mentioned I've got a free gift for you. I'd love for you to have it. If you're interested in running a business like I do, which starts with YouTube, moves them onto an email list, and then sells them courses and memberships, I can teach you how to do that in a simple framework for how to think through how that works. It's called the Business Game Plan. GAME stands for Give, Ask, Measure, Edit. I can teach you the whole thing in a free masterclass. Just go to joegilder.biz/game to get your free copy. And if you liked this and you want to keep watching more, this video is pretty popular. It talks about how exactly I make $25K a month online through my YouTube channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.